Insider. I am your host, Patrick Lyons, and today we have to talk about the news of the day for the Colorado Rockies, that being a potential slash in payroll for the 2025 season. And I'll tell you this right now, it's not potential, it's going to happen. We'll talk about the World Series just a little bit more. If you didn't listen to yesterday's show, last night's show on Sunday night, after the Dodgers clinch to guarantee the 12th time the Yankees and Dodgers have gone against each other head-to-head in the World Series. That begins on Friday. We'll dabble in that later on in the show. But we start with Patrick Saunders of the Denver Post reporting that the Rockies intend to lower their payroll next year for the 2025 season. And the reason for that is pretty simple. The Rockies lost a lot of money when AT&T SportNet disappeared. They were getting roughly $57 million a year for the rights to broadcast the games on television. And then all of a sudden, you could only watch Rockies games on MLB.com through a special package. And that special package was only paid for by a fraction of the population that AT&T SportNet was bringing in. That's why all those people that are cutting cords, they're basically, most people have by now, it seems like, but now they are no longer paying for things they don't want. They're probably paying more for the things that they do want, and it comes out in the wash. But nevertheless, there were a lot of people who had AT&T SportNet, and it ended up finding themselves watching Rockies games than would have if they had to specifically pay to watch the Rockies on television. And because of that, that's a lot of money that the Rockies just no longer had pretty much all of a sudden. I think they saw it coming down the pike at least a little bit, but certainly not 5-10 years down the line. They could not have anticipated that. So because of that, the Rockies are going to have to cut a little bit of the payroll. And you're probably thinking, well, how much payroll can they possibly cut, and where? Who are they going to have to make some trades? Yes, absolutely. But they don't have a ton of money coming off the books right now. I also want to point out that, did the Rockies lose some revenue in attendance? I think so. Not a ton, but I do think they did lose some revenue because attendance dipped just a little bit. They were helped out a lot right there at the end of the season when nearly 150,000 people showed up to watch the Dodgers for the final 3 games of the season, for the final 3 games in which the Rockies lost their 99th, 100th, and 101st game of the season. So that helped. But if you were paying attention to the Rockies, and if you're a Rockies fan, that Colorado was giving out a lot of deals, a lot of ticket deals, different packages where, hey, you could pretty much go to every single game you wanted to this month for $50, general admission seating or general admission ticket, standing room only. You'll find a spot, go up to the rooftop. You could sit in some of those seats, especially because there weren't a ton of games that were sold out in the second half, just as some of those big ticket, those marquee matchups against teams like the Red Sox and the Dodgers. But nevertheless, you could go really, really cheaply. They even had an infomercial basically trying to sell some of the suites at Coors Field. If you had Rockies TV, there was one game where they were showing you all the different food that they can prepare. Look, we can eat ice cream up here. The views are great. Please buy some of these suites. So they were hurting for money because of the lowered attendance and the general lack of interest in the Rockies. Again, attendance was close to what it was in 2023, which was close to what it was in 22. But overall, they did take a little bit of a hit in attendance, and they probably will again this next year unless things change, unless they start to win a lot more. Not a little bit more, but a lot more. You're still going to get big crowds from the Cubs, Giants, Dodgers. Yankees come to town in 2025. That's going to help. There'll be those marquee matchups for fans that are not originally from Denver. They're going to go out to the ballpark to watch those games. But overall, are you going out to the ballpark in April and May if the team is just lackluster? Even if the team is around 500, which sometimes it can be early on in the year, And that's exciting, I think, to a lot of Rockies fans. But most of the big time, the hardcore Rockies fans are already aware of how potentially good this roster can be. So if that roster lives up to the potential in April and May, sure, a lot more people are going to be buzzing about it, but is that going to move the needle that much? Probably not. So it's for that reason that even if the Rockies can do what they are setting out to do in 2025 and get themselves a little bit closer to relevance, not even 500, but maybe back into 70 wins, low 70 wins, maybe even mid 70 wins, and you say, shoot, there was about 6 more games that we could have won, we would have been 500. Is that going to get the sports fan in Denver excited about going to Rockies games? Probably not. So I think we might see another dip in attendance in 2025, another reason to cut some of that payroll. So you've got under $30 million coming off the books from 24 to 25. Charlie Blackmon, his final year, he's retired. You are now not paying him $13 million next season. Daniel Bard, who signed that 2-year, $19 million extension after an incredible 2022 campaign. You didn't get much out of him. $9.5 million is what he got paid for 2024. That's coming off the books. And Elias Diaz, you already knew he was going to have his $6 million off the books as he entered free agency. They already paid him that money after they cut him loose in August. So that right there is $28.5 million off the books. The Rockies also save $1 million on Chris Bryant's deal. He's going to get $1 million less in 2025 and in the next 3 years after that. So you made $28 million in 2024. Now he's going to make $27 million over the next 4 years. Everyone else is going to get paid a little bit more. Freeland goes from $15 million to $16 million for the next 2 years. And then the Rockies have, Kyle Freeland has a vesting option for $17 million in 2027. So you could have 3 more years of Kyle Freeland. Tovar is going to jump up $2.5 million. He's going to get a nice boost because of that 7-year extension he signed at the beginning of this year for $63.5 million guaranteed. There's a couple options on the back end. Now, had you not given Tovar that extension, you would have saved some money because you'd have been making close to the league minimum this year, next year, and the next season in 2026. And in 2027, he probably still would have been making less than what he would have in arbitration. That being said, that was a good deal for the Rockies and for Tovar. But that was a good move by Colorado, locking up Tovar. Sure, you might have to pay him more over the course of the next 3 years. But after that, now you're saving money for a guy that would be approaching his final year in arbitration and could possibly be leaving in free agency. Now you don't have that. So that's fine. Tyler Kinley gets a raise of about $1.7 million. Club option for him in 2026. His situation becomes very interesting this upcoming season. And everyone in arbitration is going to make more money guaranteed. So right now, or rather in 2024, Rockies payroll was about $147 million, according to Roster Resource. And that was 17th in Major League Baseball this year. That's pretty much where the Rockies have been for their lifespan. The Rockies have always spent money. They've never been a truly small market team in that way where they don't go out and spend money. It's how they spend their money. That's really the issue. Are they investing it in the best possible places? That can be problematic because we've seen tons of teams in the mid-20s go to the postseason because they're frugal. It's how they spend the money. It's how they use that resource. And the Rockies have always spent fairly well. In 2023, they were 16th in the majors with a $172 million roster. So it already had taken a dip from the previous season in 23 to 24. They were 20th in 2022, coming off the pandemic. 18th in 2021, 12th in 2020, 12th, 14th, 16th, 17th. In 2015, they were 23rd. 2014, they were 17th. 2013, they were 24th. 2012, they were 22nd. Those were previously the 4 worst seasons the Rockies had ever posted in regards to their win-loss record. That is up until now. So they've always been in the mid to high teens. And it was a 5-year stretch from 2005 to 2009 that they were consistently in the 20s from 2005 to 2009. Could they go back to that? Absolutely. And I don't know that that's a bad thing. One of the reasons why you can have a really low payroll is because you have a really young roster and you don't have to go out and spend a lot of money in free agency. Now, I think we're going to see a team like the Baltimore Orioles go out with their young roster and spend a lot of money in free agency and still kind of be mid-table, kind of be middle of the pack in terms of how much they end up spending on payroll. That's one of the reasons why I think the Rockies, while right now they project to be about the 17th largest payroll in baseball for the 2025 season. Right now they're at about $130 million. That's set to be 17th. But a couple of the teams behind them, I think, are going to spend and shoot past them because their window of contention is now. The Rockies do not have a window of contention. They're hoping that it opens up after the 2025 campaign, but they've been hoping for that for a couple years, and that really remains to be seen. Arizona is projecting to be 18th. By projecting, I mean right now, if no moves are made. So is Arizona going to spend a little bit more? I think so. Their time is now. Kansas City at 19th? Yes, I think so. The Brewers are 20th. I don't know about that. Maybe. Maybe not. Then you start getting to teams that are much further down in terms of the money that's being outlaid for their payroll. I think the Reds at 21st, I think they're going to go out and spend again. We saw them spend last offseason with their really young roster. And now that they brought in Terry Francona, they clearly are trying to win now. So are the Reds going to end up spending more money than the Rockies? I think so. We also know that the Rockies are going to slash payroll. So they're at 17th, and on their own, they're trying to get lower actively. Cleveland's at 22. Detroit's at 24. I don't know if they're going to be able to spend enough in free agency to go ahead and leapfrog the Rockies. The Orioles right now are only at 25th. I think they're going to go ahead and surpass what the Rockies' payroll is going to be next year. So will the Rockies end up being 20-something? I think there's a fair chance of that. Does that really mean that much? I don't think so. I don't think that really means that much that the Rockies are going to have to find ways to cut some payroll and make some trades for some of their veterans that they have. Who are those veterans going to be? That's tomorrow. Make sure you're listening to that, where I break down who are those trade candidates going to be for Colorado to help them reduce their payroll just a little bit. So if they're trying to reduce payroll, that means they're not going to sign anyone. Is that a bad thing? Is that a good thing? Well, here's how I see it. The Rockies have a young roster right now, and they are only going to get younger with the players that they've got in AA, in AAA. They should get younger. Whether or not they do is a separate situation because the Rockies are still going to go out and sign players on non-roster deals. They've done it the last couple of years. They're going to continue to do that. Sign guys on minor league deals that eventually they're going to bring up. We saw them last year spend $1.5 million on Dakota Hudson and Jacob Stallings to give them a little bit more depth. That's still going to be what they do. They're going to add a player here or there on a one-year deal for a very low amount of guaranteed money to fill a hole on their roster that they feel exists. Certainly the bullpen could benefit from a more veteran arm. It also means it's going to be a very quiet winter. Rockies fans, you're going to have to wait until spring to get excited. There's going to be a lot of intriguing names going to other teams. A lot of trades for big players that teams in the division are going to make. You know, the Dodgers right now have got a World Series to worry about, but come off season, when a lot of their guys end up going elsewhere on expiring contracts, they're going to get creative. They're going to get better. They're going to get more exciting. and the Rockies are going to try to cut payroll. It doesn't mean they're not going to get exciting, because on the positive side, what this means, this cutting of payroll and potentially trading away some of the more veteran assets that are making good money, fair money, market value, I'd say, maybe even below, because they haven't reached free agency yet. So that's a different market altogether. But on the positive side, by cutting payroll, this should mean that some younger players on this roster and in the organization should get plenty of room to breathe and develop and become future cornerstones of this franchise. Will that happen? I don't know. Because we've seen in the past 2 years, the Rockies do have a proclivity to bring in a veteran player or two that takes playing time away from those younger players. So you want to get hyped up. You want to have some hope about it. And we'll wait and see what happens. But there is a track record. There is a track record, I think, that carries a lot of weight, especially when some teams, this would be one of them, the front office says one thing and they operate within the boundaries of that definition. But in good faith, are they really doing what they're saying they're doing? It doesn't always seem that way. You know, this year they acquired Jake Cave right before the season started. He got 346 plate appearances. Sam Hilliard got 155. Now, both those guys had a lot of value, absolutely. But they didn't help the lingering questions this club has had since 2021, when Nolan Arenado, Trevor Story, and John Gray departed. They left the franchise. And there was questions about who are the next future superstars going to be. And it's only now that we've uncovered Brenton Doyle and Ezekiel Tovar, and that's it. That's it. It took 3+ years to turn over 2 players. And you say, well, maybe Michael Toglia is in that group. Took a while for him to get those opportunities, didn't it? Nolan Jones got hurt, so okay, we're waiting to see. Hunter Goodman, man, he really looked good in September. Got a lot of playing time at catcher. Why didn't it happen earlier? Again, it goes back to that conversation about playing time and giving away plate appearances and innings to veterans when you are trying to find the next John Gray. You're trying to find the next Carlos Estevez and the next Trevor Story and Nolan Arenado. And if there isn't playing time, if there isn't room to let these guys grow, it's going to be harder to do that. Dakota Hudson and Ty Block combined for 30 starts this year. Sure, there's a lot of guys you're probably thinking of right now that you would have preferred to have seen get starts for the Rockies. In 2023, it was Harold Castro, a non-roster invite, 270 plate appearances. You can probably toss Jurickson Profar in the conversation because he was literally a last-minute signing before opening day. Yeah, he did make $7.8 million from the Rockies, but it seemed like an unnecessary veteran pickup for a team that was already going to be in the basement of the NL West. Those at-bats could have gone to somebody else to determine, hey, is this guy going to be a player? Is he going to be a future cornerstone? Frankly, I can't complain too much about the 50 starts that were made in 2023 by Ty Block and Chase Anderson and Chris Flexen and Jose Urena and Dinelson Lamet, because there really weren't too many starting pitching options in 2023, in part because the Rockies made just one trade at the 2021 and 2022 trade deadlines combined. In 2022, you could get a little crazy about the 467 plate appearances given to Jose Iglesias, but there's going to be veterans that are going to be brought into the fold, albeit very cheaply and at the cost of playing time for some of the young players that finished at AA and AAA this year. So we'll have to wait and see how much playing time these young guys get. They will get opportunities, but will they be sufficient enough opportunities to allow them to grow? Or will it be similar to what Michael Toglia had to deal with, after making his debut in 2022 and then going back and forth in 2023, not really getting an opportunity over at first base, and then not really getting an opportunity in 2024 at the start of the year until eventually the keys were turned over to him midway through the season? Are we going to have to wait for that to happen again? It remains to be seen. We'll see. But hopefully We're going to get a lot of guys getting that opportunity because so many of them are in the upper levels of the minor leagues. Zach Veen, Yankiel Fernandez in the outfield, and Carson Palmquist had a taste of Albuquerque already this year. Ade Amador, Chase Dolander, Sean Sullivan, Ryan Ritter, Sterling Thompson, Benny Montgomery. Throw Warming Bernabel and Zach Agnos into that group. That's 10 prospects that could be debuting next year for Colorado. And that doesn't even include some of those relief prospects that almost come out of nowhere to be valuable, like a Dugan Darnell. Ryan Rawlson probably goes in that group. Stephen Jones, Juan Mejia, Evan Shawver, Carson Skipper. You can even toss in a ton of starting pitchers that may transition into relieving this offseason. That doesn't include Kyle Karros, who is the Northwest League MVP. Jordan Beck made the jump from Spokane from 23 to the Rockies in 24. Karros can absolutely do that. So you have a lot of guys you can get excited about. But when can you get excited about them really being cornerstones that you can not just pencil them into the lineup, you can pen them into the lineup. You can chisel them into the lineup like you can with Doyle and Tovar. It took a while for those guys to establish themselves, and they did it. Congratulations to them. Everybody's excited about that. But it took 2 years for those guys to do that. And they were only able to do that because they got consistent playing time, just like Michael Toglia did this year. And so if that list of 15 or so prospects sounds good and enticing, how many of them are going to get regular enough playing time to establish themselves and for us to really be able to say, this guy is a gamer. This guy is someone I know is going to be there through the 6-month slog of the season and is really going to contribute and be an above average player and get the Rockies back to a point where they are not just relevant, not just at 500, but going to the postseason. It's one thing to have a lot of young players on your roster. It's another to actually play them. That is the real sticking point in 2025 next year. So cutting payroll is not terribly a bad thing, especially when tomorrow I get into who those players are going to be. It's not a bad thing. Where's that playing time going to now? That is a critical component of the 2025 season that we've been saying since 2021. Who are the next guys going to be that bring this team back to October, back to the postseason? And we're still figuring that out now, 4 years later. We've got some, not enough. Still waiting. You've been waiting for a while for the Dodgers and Yankees to face off in the World Series. Now you probably haven't been waiting, especially if you're a Rockies fan. The two evil empires going head-to-head for the first time in the World Series since 1981. 12th time these two historic franchises will face off. For a lot of people listening to this, especially if you're under the age of 40, this is the first time in your life. You know that in baseball history. You know every October, they're always flashing back to old Yankees games, old Brooklyn Dodgers games. But you never really had to live through Yankees Dodgers every year, Yankees Giants, Yankees Cardinals. Those matchups that were very frequent. I'm curious to see what kind of celebrities end up showing up for these games. You got the two coasts. You got celebrities popping up all over the place. Jamie Foxx, I know, was there on Sunday at Game 6. We're going to see lots of Spike Lee in New York City. Maybe Spike Lee even goes out to Dodger Stadium. I could see that. I could see him maybe dropping everything in his schedule to go to all 7 games. We hope it's 7, right? 2 sweetest words in all of sports. Game 7. Who's going to have the better celebrities, New York or LA? Honestly, I think it's going to be New York because New Yorkers in general, people and celebrities are more real. They're real people more so than the people that live in LA, the celebrities in LA. I don't know. Maybe, hopefully that's not a major talking point. We're all coming for the baseball. We're not coming for the celebrities that are in the audience. We got Ohtani's first World Series. He's the biggest celebrity that I care about. I wonder how many cutaways we're going to have of his wife, Mamiko Tanaka. Are there going to be any cutaways of his dog, Decoy? I mean, those are celebrities that I think might move the needle for folks in Japan who I mean, the entire country is going to be watching this World Series. Absolutely. Ohtani reached base 17 times in the championship series in the NLCS, tying a single series Dodgers postseason record. Didn't even get a game 7, still tied it. We got Ohtani and Judge as the main event. Mookie Betts versus Juan Soto as the undercard. Let's go. 2 MVPs. We're going to have 2 unanimous MVPs facing off in this World Series as well. That hasn't happened a ton of times in recent memory. Really, in the last 30 years, you've got Miguel Cabrera and Buster Posey in 2012. And now we've got Shohei Ohtani against Aaron Judge in the World Series. 2 marquee franchises, 2 marquee players. Let's go. Cabrera and Posey in 2012 for the Tigers and Giants, respectively, were the first pair of batting champions to meet in the World Series since 1954. 88, some people may have been alive for. Well, a lot of people were alive. But if you're listening to this, you may or may not have been alive for Jose Canseco against Kirk Gibson. A's versus Dodgers. 1980, even less. George Brett versus Mike Schmidt. Royals, Phillies, 2 third basemen facing off. This is the 26th time. And we know it's Judge and Ohtani as MVP, right? Come on. This will be the 26th time that they face off. 2 MVPs from the AL and NL. This will be the 5th time you've got a Yankee and Dodger facing off. Elston Howard versus Sandy Koufax in 1963 was the last one. Hitter and a pitcher. Same thing in 56. You had Mickey Mantle and Don Newcomb. 2 catchers in 1955, Yogi Berra versus Roy Campanella. And in 1941, Joe DiMaggio versus Dolph Camilli. And I think I was surprised with how big the number was for MVPs facing off against each other in the World Series. That year's MVPs, not the reigning ones. We're not talking about Ronald Acuna Jr. versus Ohtani. And again, we don't know that yet, but we'll look back on it. We do know. We do know the 2 best players in the game. We have an award for it. We know. But I think it makes sense that it's happened so often is because previously, besides the fact that there were a lot fewer teams and a lot fewer options, a great player could make the difference for you going to the World Series. And all you had to do was have the best record during the regular season. There wasn't a gauntlet of postseason. There wasn't even one round of postseason. It was straight to the World Series. And also back then, value meant not best. Value didn't mean most best player. It meant most valuable to your team. You could hit 50 home runs and have minimal value if your team loses 90 games. So value meant you were basically the most integral and most important player on the best team in your league. So it makes sense that they would have faced off against each other that many times before. But this will be the first time since 2012 and the first time in, 36 years? Or the second time in 36 years? It's a lot. Schedule is officially released. If you listen to yesterday's show, I already talked about Friday and Saturday, day off. It's 2-3-2. Friday, Saturday, day off. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday at Yankee Stadium, day off on Thursday. Friday and Saturday, November 1st, November 2nd at Dodger Stadium. All games 6:08 Mountain Daylight Time. And then once the World Series is over, we do the daylight thing, fall back an hour. It gets dark at 2 p.m. That's baseball. And that's America. Thank you so much for joining me. Make sure you're over on the socials at Patrick D. Lyons, at Patrick D. Lyons MLB, at Rockies_Insider. We'll get through this offseason. We absolutely will, especially when you continue to show up, review, subscribe, do all those wonderful things. That helps keep me going, believe it or not. It's a free podcast, but that's the little way that you can show some appreciation and you can pay me back, as it were. Thank you so much for this momentum. As I like to say, it's only as good. That momentum is only as good as my next podcast. So I'll talk to you tomorrow.